Today, I'm going to tell you a story so haunting it blurs the line between love and survival, set in the unforgiving American Wild West, where red dust hangs in the air and danger rides on every horizon. This is a land shaped by violence, faith, and fate, where two enemies are pushed together by forces neither of them chose. It all begins with a single act of mercy, small, unexpected, and powerful enough to change the destiny of two worlds forever. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The ambush came with the falling light. The wagon wheels groaned over the baked ground, each slow turn carrying them farther into land that was never meant to welcome them. Clara Reed pressed her palm against the wooden slat, the rough grain biting into her skin as if warning her to pull back. Through the torn canvas, she watched the sun spill orange and red across the horizon, the desert caught between flame and shadow. "We'll make camp soon," her father called from the driver's bench. Jonah Reed's voice carried that strained optimism he had worn like a shield ever since they left Missouri 3 months earlier. Martha Reed sat beside him, bonnet drawn low against the dust, hands folded neatly in her lap the way they always were during evening prayer. Across from Clara, her younger brother Noah kicked at a sack of dried flowers, restless and confident. At 12, he believed himself ready for anything the frontier could throw at him. Clara knew better. At 19, she had heard enough stories, passed enough broken wagons and crooked wooden crosses along the trail to understand how fragile hope really was. The caravan counted 6 wagons, 23 souls chasing California's promise, the Stone family with their children, Old Crawford and his nephew, the newly married Fords, still looking at each other like the world held nothing but light and possibility. "Clara, help your mother with supper," Jonah said as the wagons rolled into their usual evening circle. Clara climbed down, her boots striking the earth with a soft thud that sounded too loud in the growing stillness. Something was wrong. The air itself seemed to wait. She had barely coaxed the fire to life when the sound reached her, like distant thunder, but wrong somehow. The men heard it too. She saw her father's hand slide toward his rifle, saw Caleb Stone straighten where he had been unhitching his oxen. Then it happened. The Red Mesa people burst from the dying light, moving fast and silent, as if born from the shadows themselves. Their cries split the air. Arrows cut through the dusk before anyone could react. Agnes Ford screamed. Clara saw her go down, clutching her shoulder where an arrow bloomed like a dark flower. "Get down!" someone shouted. "Under the wagons!" Jonah's voice barely carried through the chaos as gunfire erupted on both sides. Clara dove behind a water barrel as Martha dragged Noah down beside her. The smell of powder mixed with dust and fear until the air burned in her lungs. She watched her father raise his rifle. Fire. Reload. His hands that had broken soil and built a home back in Missouri, hands that had once held her through summer storms, worked with desperate precision. The arrow struck him square in the chest. Jonah staggered, the rifle slipping from his grasp. "Father!" The word tore from Clara's throat, but her mother's arms locked around her, pinning her to the ground as the world shattered into flame and noise. The Red Mesa people moved like smoke through the camp. Painted faces flashed past, feathers dark against the burning sky. One wagon caught fire. The Stones. Clara heard children crying somewhere inside the smoke. And then she saw him. He sat astride a painted horse at the edge of the fight, watching everything with calm, unreadable eyes. He wore no paint, only plain buckskin, and a single eagle feather woven into his dark hair. Even in the violence, he was still, commanding without raising a hand. Their eyes met across the battlefield. For one impossible heartbeat, everything narrowed to that single look. Clara couldn't move, couldn't breathe. His face was carved by wind and sun, neither young nor old, shaped by a life she could not imagine. Her mother seized her arm, dragging her toward the burning wagons. "We have to run, Clara! We have to—" The shot came from the left. Martha's grip loosened. She folded to the ground with a sound no louder than a sigh, as if exhaustion had finally claimed her. Noah screamed, throwing himself over her still body. "No, no, no!" Clara dropped beside them, her hands slick with blood as she tried to stop what could not be stopped. Martha's eyes were already dimming. "Take care of your brother," she whispered, blood bubbling at her lips. "Be strong, my sweet girl, be—" The words never finished. Something inside Clara shattered, clean and sharp as winter ice. Noah sobbed against her shoulder, and she held him, shielding him from the nightmare closing in around them. The gunfire faded. Too many settlers had fallen. She saw Caleb Stone lying face down in the dirt, heard old Crawford calling for a nephew who would never answer. Footsteps approached, slow, deliberate. Clara looked up. The Apache leader stood over them, warriors at his sides. Up close, she saw the scar along his jaw, the deep lines around his eyes etched by years of hard decisions. He spoke in his own language to the man beside him. The warrior nodded and reached for Noah. Clara tightened her hold on her brother, pulling him closer to her chest. "No," Clara Reed said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Please, he's just a boy." The leader held her gaze for a long, measuring moment. Then he spoke. She didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear in the small motion of his hand. The warrior beside him stepped back. More words followed in that sharp, flowing tongue. Two warriors seized Clara by the arms and pulled her upright. Noah clutched at her skirt, his fingers digging into the fabric, but they pried him loose, not cruelly, just firmly. As she struggled to keep her balance, Clara saw the others being taken as well, young women from the convoy. Her breath caught as she recognized them. Agnes Ford, pale and shaking despite the blood soaking her shoulder, and the two Stone girls, Lena and Rose, barely more than children themselves. "No, Clara!" Noah cried, reaching for her again, but another warrior stepped between them and held him back. At a single word from the leader, they did not harm the boy. They kept him with the others instead. The few men too old to fight, the children, the wounded who might still survive. The leader swung onto his horse in one smooth motion. He looked down at Clara and said something. One word that might have been a name or an order. When she didn't answer, he nodded once. His men bound her hands, not harshly, but tight enough to make escape impossible, and lifted her onto a horse behind one of the warriors. As they turned away, Clara twisted in the saddle for one last look. Noah stood amid the wreckage, tears cutting clean lines through the dust on his face. Their parents lay motionless in the fading light. Everything they had hauled across half a continent, hope, dreams, the quilts her grandmother had sewn, Jonah Reed's books, her mother's china lay shattered and burning. The leader raised his hand. The Red Mesa people moved out into the deepening dark. Clara closed her eyes, holding the image of her brother's face as tightly as she could, knowing she might never see him again. The horse's hooves struck the earth in a steady rhythm, carrying her away from everything she had been, toward a fate she could not imagine. Her mother's last words echoed in her mind. Be strong. And she wondered if strength would be enough for what lay ahead. Behind them, the burning wagons sent black smoke into a sky already filling with stars, marking the end of one life and the beginning of another. she never could have imagined when she woke that morning to her mother's soft humming and talk of California gold. The Red Mesa people rode through the night, and Clara rode with them, a captive drawn into the vast frontier where different laws ruled and different gods were named. The only certainty was the solid weight of the horse beneath her, and the unsettling truth that the leader, for reasons she could not grasp, had chosen to spare her life. The moon rose full and bright, silvering the desert, and still they rode on, deeper into Red Mesa land, deeper into the unknown. Clara woke to unfamiliar sounds. The soft nickering of horses, low voices speaking a language she could not follow, the crack of wood in a morning fire. For one brief moment, she reached for the comfort of her mother's quilt. Her fingers met only packed earth and the coarse blanket someone had thrown over her in the night. Memory struck hard and fast. The raid, her parents in the dust, Noah's face shrinking as they rode away. She bit her knuckle to keep from crying out, tasting dirt and fear. The camp lay in a hidden valley, ringed by red rock walls that rose like ancient guards. 40, maybe 50 shelters dotted the ground. Not the teepees she had imagined from cheap novels, but low, dome-shaped dwellings made of bent branches and brush. Smoke curled upward, and the smell of cooking food twisted painfully in her empty stomach. She sat up slowly, aware of eyes on her. The other captive women huddled nearby. Agnes Ford cradled her bandaged shoulder. Lena and Rose Stone clung to each other. They looked to Clara, perhaps because she was the oldest, perhaps because she had spoken during the raid. "Are you hurt?" Clara whispered to Agnes. "It's not deep," Agnes said, though her face was gray with pain. "Clara, what will they do to us?" Before Clara could admit she didn't know, movement drew her eye. The leader stepped out from one of the larger shelters, speaking with an older man whose hair was streaked with gray. Even from a distance, his presence carried weight. People moved around him with quiet respect. He glanced their way, and for a heartbeat his eyes met Clara's before she forced herself to look down, focusing instead on the life unfolding around them. Women tending fires, children playing with hoop and stick toys, men checking weapons and horses. It felt unreal, this calm, domestic scene, when her own world had ended in blood only hours earlier. An older woman approached, her dark hair threaded with silver. She carried a water gourd and strips of dried meat. When she offered them, Clara hesitated, then accepted as hunger overcame fear. The meat was tough and flavored with something unfamiliar, but it was food. "Thank you," Clara said softly, unsure if the woman understood. The woman studied her with sharp, intelligent eyes, then spoke in clear, accented English. "You eat, grow strong, much work ahead." Surprise must have shown on Clara's face, because the woman's mouth curved faintly, almost amused. "Many seasons," she added. "I lived at the mission school before I came home." She swept a hand around the camp. "This is home," she said plainly. "You learn or you die. Simple." With that almost cheerful verdict, the woman moved on to hand out food. Clara Reed chewed slowly, absorbing the words along with the tough meat. At least one person here spoke English. That alone felt like a small mercy. The day blurred into strangeness. They were set to work, gathering firewood, grinding corn between stones, hauling water from the narrow stream cutting through the valley. Clara's hands, once soft from a life in Missouri, blistered quickly under the unfamiliar labor. She did not complain. Instead, she watched. She listened. She tried to learn the rhythm of this place. The Apache women worked beside them, some curious, some openly hostile. One young woman, close to Clara's age, deliberately shoved into her at the stream, knocking her hard into the shallow water. Laughter rippled from the others as Clara dragged herself back up, soaked, humiliated, but refusing to lower her gaze. "Pale women weak," the girl said in broken English. "You not last." Clara twisted the water from her skirts and said nothing. Anger burned hot in her chest, but she thought of Martha Reed's quiet strength, of Jonah Reed's steady resolve, and lifted her chin. She would last. She had to. As the sun climbed high, she noticed Nail watching her from where he sat with the men, shaping arrow shafts. His face revealed nothing, yet his gaze pressed against her like weight. Every time she glanced up, he was there, observing her struggle with the same intensity he had shown during the raid. Late afternoon brought an unexpected pause. The older woman who had fed them earlier, Clara had heard others call her White Willow, motioned for her to follow. Tired but curious, Clara obeyed. White Willow led her to a small shelter set apart from the others. Inside, dried herbs hung from the curved frame, filling the space with a sharp, clean scent. She handed Clara a small pot of thick paste. "For hands," she said, rubbing her palms together in demonstration. "White woman hands too soft. This makes strong." Clara applied the salve, wincing as it burned her blisters before easing them. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. White Willow was quiet for a long moment, grinding something in a stone bowl. "My son," she said finally. "He sees something in you. I do not know what. But he is chief now. Since his father had crossed into the spirit world, what her son saw mattered. Chief." Clara tucked the word away, realizing the man who spared her was far more than a raid leader. "Your son," Clara said carefully. "What is his name?" "His name is Nail," White Willow replied. A faint smile touched her lips. "His child name is not for pale women." "Nail." Clara turned the name over in her thoughts as White Willow showed her which plants healed and which harmed. Speaking in a mix of English and Apache, Clara barely followed. She listened anyway. Knowledge here could mean survival. As darkness settled, the captives were guided back to their sleeping area. Lena and Rose Stone had cried most of the day. Agnes Ford looked feverish despite the care given to her shoulder. Clara comforted them as best she could, though her own grief lay heavy in her chest, too dense for tears. She was settling Lena when she sensed someone nearby. Nail stood at the edge of their space, his face half shadowed by dying cook fires. He held something in his hands. Without a word, he set them down. Thicker blankets than the ones they'd been given. And a water gourd. His eyes found Clara's, held them for a heartbeat. Then he was gone, moving through the camp as silently as his name. "Why does he watch you?" Agnes Ford asked weakly. "I don't know," Clara said, pulling a blanket around Lena's shoulders. But White Willow's words echoed in her mind. "He sees something in you." Clara could not imagine what an Apache chief might see in a minister's daughter who still spilled water when she carried it. That night, she lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the camp settling. Somewhere beyond the valley, coyotes howled, others answering until their voices braided the dark. She thought of Noah, praying someone had found him among the frontier settlers, that he was alive. She thought, too, of Nail's scarred face, of the blankets, of the way he had looked at her across the battlefield. Nothing about him matched the stories she had been raised on, the savage caricatures from newspapers and fireside talk. He was something more complicated, more human, and that frightened her more than a monster ever could. The stars wheeled overhead, the same stars that had watched over their wagon train only nights ago. Yet everything beneath them had changed. Clara pulled the blanket higher, breathing in smoke and sage, and tried to imagine surviving another day in this valley that was both prison and refuge. Tomorrow would bring more work, more eyes, more of Niall's unsettling attention. But tonight, she was alive. The Stone Girls were alive. Even Agnes Ford still breathed. Despite the fever still clinging to her, Agnes Ford breathed steadily beside them. It was a fragile thing to cling to, but it was something. When sleep finally pulled her under, Clara Reed's last thought was a prayer, not for rescue, not for vengeance, but for strength. Her mother's final words echoed softly in her mind. "Be strong, my sweet girl." In this strange valley, surrounded by people who had every reason to despise her, strength felt like the only currency that mattered. Coyotes lifted their voices to the moon, wild and haunting, and Clara slept her first night as a captive. The Apache chief's blanket lay wrapped around her, heavy and unsettling, like a promise she did not yet understand. Silence stretched between worlds. Morning routines became familiar after 2 weeks in the valley. Clara woke before dawn, her body slowly learning the rhythm of the camp. She braided Lena Stone's hair, then Rose's, copying the neat patterns the Apache women had shown her. Agnes Ford's fever had broken 3 days earlier, though her shoulder remained stiff and swollen. Clara was grinding corn when Niall approached. She had grown used to his presence, the way he appeared at the edges of her days, watchful and silent, like a shadow that chose when to take form. But this time he did not merely observe. He crouched beside her and set down a handful of mesquite pods. "These," he said in careful English, "make sweet, good with corn." Clara nearly dropped the grinding stone. It was the first time she had heard him speak her language. His voice was deeper than she expected, rough as stone worn by sand. "You speak English," she said, then immediately felt foolish. "Some," he replied, showing her how to crush the pods. His hands moved with quiet certainty. "Learned from traders, from soldiers." His mouth tightened slightly on the last word. Clara focused on the work, keenly aware of how close he was. She noticed the fine lines around his eyes, the way his hair fell forward as he leaned in. He smelled of leather and horse, mixed with sage and smoke. "Why?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "Why did you spare us?" For so long he said nothing that she thought he might refuse to answer. Then he spoke. "Red Mesa people sometimes take women, strong children, new ways." His eyes flicked to hers, unreadable. "But you... different reason." Before she could ask what he meant, shouts broke out across the camp. A hunting party had returned in chaos. A mountain lion had attacked them along the trail, wounding 2 men before it was killed. Niall was on his feet at once, barking orders. Clara watched him command the camp, sending the wounded to White Willow's dwelling, directing others to handle the carcass. His authority was complete and unquestioned. The commotion drew everyone's attention, including the captives. She saw her chance. Moving quickly, Clara reached for Niall's water gourd, where he had left it. Tied to it was a small pouch. From it, she carefully removed a single eagle feather, the one he wore during ceremonies. She wasn't sure why she took it. Curiosity, perhaps, or the need to hold something of the man who controlled her fate. She tucked it into her bodice just as White Willow appeared. "You help," the older woman commanded, motioning sharply toward her dwelling. "Men foolish. Get too close to lion, now bleed and shout." Clara was pulled into service as a healer's assistant. White Willow worked with practiced precision, cleaning wounds and applying poultices. She spoke rapidly in Apache, then switched to gestures and broken English when she remembered Clara could not follow. "Hold here. Press hard. No, not harder. Warriors think strong means careless. You show them." One of the wounded men belonged to the young woman who had shoved Clara at the stream. A deep gash ran along his leg, and the woman hovered anxiously. When she saw Clara, her expression hardened. "No want pale woman touch him," she spat. White Willow snapped something sharp in Apache, and the young woman stepped back at once. "That one Ayana," White Willow said quietly to Clara. "Much pride, little sense. You ignore." As Clara held the injured leg steady while White Willow stitched, she felt a presence at the doorway. Nail was watching. Something in his expression shifted. Surprise, perhaps, or approval. When their eyes met, heat rushed to Clara's face, and she quickly looked away. The work lasted hours. By the time both men were resting, her dress was stained with blood and her arms trembled with exhaustion. Yet she felt more useful than she had since arriving in the valley. White Willow nodded once. "You have steady hands. Good for healing. I teach more, if you want learn." "Yes," Clara said without hesitation. "I want to learn." That evening, Niall found her at the stream, washing dried blood from her arms as the sun set, painting the red rock walls in fire and gold. "My mother says you did well," he said quietly. He spoke while keeping a careful distance, close enough for words, but no closer. "She is a good teacher." Clara Reed dried her hands on her skirt, then drew in a breath. "Will you teach me your language?" she asked. "It would help to understand." He studied her for a long moment. "Why you want this?" Clara chose honesty. "Because I'm here. Because understanding might keep me and the others alive." She hesitated, then continued. "And because you interest me. I want to know why." Something flickered in Nail's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. He sat on a flat rock by the stream and motioned for her to sit as well, leaving a deliberate space between them. "First word," he said, touching his chest. "This." Then he gestured outward toward the valley. "And this. The people you call Apache." "Ende," Clara repeated, careful with the sound. He shook his head slightly and demonstrated again, touching his throat. "From here, not only lips." They worked until the sky darkened. Clara learned simple words: water, sky, horse, fire. Nael was patient but exacting, making her repeat sounds until she formed them correctly. When she finally managed to say, "Gohi aheda," "Good morning," his mouth almost curved into a smile. "Tomorrow more," he said, standing. Then he paused, looking down at her. "You ask why I interest you." She waited. "I say same," he continued. "Why you interest me, Clara Reed." It was the first time he had spoken her name. Hearing it in his accented English sent an unexpected shiver through her. After he left, Clara realized the eagle feather was still hidden in her bodice. She should return it. She knew that. Yet she kept it, a quiet secret pressed close to her heart. The days settled into a new rhythm. Morning work, afternoon healing lessons with White Willow, evenings by the stream, learning words with Nail. The Red Mesa people watched with mixed reactions, some curious, some openly displeased. Ayana, in particular, radiated hostility whenever Clara stood near Nail. "She wants him," Agnes Ford observed one afternoon as they hauled water. "Wants to be the chief's wife. You're in her way." "I'm not in anyone's way," Clara said quickly. "I'm a captive. I don't have a choice." Even as she spoke, she knew it wasn't entirely true. She did have choices, to learn or to resist, to understand or remain blind, to see Nail as a man or only as her captor. Each evening by the stream, she chose to see him as human. He taught her that his people called themselves Ende, that they had lived on this land since before memory. He showed her how to read the sky for weather, how to find water where none seemed to exist, which plants healed and which killed. In return, She told him about her life before. Her father Jonah Reed's small church in Missouri, Martha Reed's garden, the books she loved. "Books," he said one evening, testing the word. "I saw them once, black marks that speak, strange magic." "Not magic," Clara said gently. "Just another language." She picked up a stick and drew letters in the dirt. "This is A, the first letter of Apache." His interest was immediate, intense. As she learned his spoken words, he began learning her written ones. He was quick, his memory sharp. Within days, he could write his name. Not Nail, but the English spelling of his childhood name, which he finally shared one evening, his voice low. "My mother called me Hoshka," he said. "It means angry one. I was difficult child." Clara laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time since the raid. "That doesn't surprise me," she said. He looked startled, then his mouth curved just slightly. "You make jokes now." "Laughter keeps spirits strong," he said. "This is good." But not everyone welcomed their growing closeness. One evening, as Clara returned from her lesson, Ayanna stepped into her path, blocking it. She spoke rapidly in Apache, her tone sharp and hostile. "I don't understand," Clara said carefully in Apache, one of the phrases Nail had taught her. Ayanna's eyes narrowed. She switched to English. "You think you are special," Ayanna said coldly. "You think he chooses you, but you are nothing." Her voice dropped lower, sharper. "Weak, pale, nothing. When he grows tired of teaching his pet, you will see." She shoved past Clara Reed, striking her shoulder hard enough to sting. Clara staggered but kept her footing. Her jaw tightened. She refused to give Ayanna the satisfaction of seeing her fall. That night, Clara lay awake, fingering the hidden eagle feather beneath her blanket, wondering what Nail truly saw when he looked at her. Curiosity? A student? Or something far more dangerous? The thought unsettled her more than Ayanna's threats ever could. The feather seemed to burn against her skin, a silent reminder that despite the violence of their meeting, the gulf between their worlds, and the sheer impossibility of it all, something was growing between them. Something undeniable. Tomorrow he would teach her more words. She would teach him more letters. Slowly, carefully. They were building a bridge across silence, one fragile word at a time. The storm came out of the mountains like an angry force given shape. By afternoon, the sky turned black as scorched iron. Clara had known prairie storms back in Missouri, but nothing like this. The wind screamed through the valley, tearing at brush shelters and scattering sparks from cook fires into chaos. "Inside! Everyone inside!" White Willow shouted, her usual calm cracking as she drove children toward cover. Lightning split the sky, followed instantly by thunder that seemed to shake the ground beneath their feet. Clara was helping Lena Stone and Rose Stone secure their shelter when she heard screaming. High, panicked, unmistakable. A horse, a young mare Nail had been training, had snapped her tether in terror. She bolted through the camp, eyes white with fear, hooves churning mud and stone. "Stay here," Clara ordered the girls. Then she ran. Rain slammed into her face, soaking her dress in seconds. She could barely see through the downpour, but she heard the mare's frantic cries and the shouts of men trying to corner her. The horse burst past a cluster of shelters and headed straight for the narrow trail climbing the valley wall. In this storm, on slick rock, she would fall, break her legs, or die. Clara didn't stop to think. She had grown up with horses, had helped Jonah Reed gentle half-wild foals back home. She planted herself in the mare's path, arms spread wide. "Whoa, girl!" she called. "Easy! Easy now!" The mare skidded, mud spraying, hooves sliding dangerously close to the edge. For one terrifying heartbeat, Clara thought they would both plunge into the ravine. Then strong arms locked around her waist. She was yanked backward just as the mare's shoulder clipped her. They crashed into the mud together, rolling hard. Niall's body took the impact, shielding her as they tumbled twice before stopping. Clara landed sprawled across his chest. They lay there, breathless, soaked, streaked with red mud. Rain poured over them, washing dark lines down their faces. "Foolish woman," Niall snapped, his English vanishing as anger took hold. He continued in rapid Apache, words Clara now understood too well, about her lack of sense and her apparent desire to die. "The horse," she began. "Horse can be replaced," he cut in fiercely. "You cannot." His hands gripped her arms, hard enough to shake meaning into her. Then he froze. He seemed to realize how close they were, how her body was pressed against his. His grip loosened, sliding to her waist. The storm raged around them, but Clara was suddenly aware of nothing else. Of the rise and fall of his chest beneath her, of the heat of his hands, of his eyes, usually so controlled, now raw and unguarded. "Clara," he said, just her name. And in that moment, surrounded by thunder and rain, she knew whatever lay between them was no longer something that could be ignored. The way he said it sent a shiver through Clara Reed, cutting deeper than the cold rain. A shout shattered the moment. Someone was calling for the chief, voices rising with urgency. Niall helped her to her feet. His touch was careful now, restrained, almost formal, but the look he gave her before turning away burned hotter than any flame. That evening, after the storm passed, the camp gathered around the central fire to take stock. Several dwellings had been damaged. Some stored food was ruined by water, but no one had been badly hurt, and all the horses were accounted for. Clara sat with the other captive women, trying to ignore the way her skin still tingled where Niall's hands had been. She had changed into dry clothes, an Apache dress White Willow had given her, saying her white woman's clothing was useless here. Still, she felt the ghost of his touch. "You're shaking," Agnes Ford said quietly. "Just cold," Clara replied, though she knew it was a lie. Across the fire, Niall sat with the other leaders, discussing repairs. Yet his eyes found hers through the flames, and the look in them made her stomach twist. Something had shifted between them in the mud, something that could not be undone. Ayanna saw it too. She sat close to Niall, offering him food, brushing his arm when she spoke. But his attention stayed fixed on Clara, obvious enough that whispers rippled through the gathering like wind through grass. When White Willow summoned Clara to help distribute the evening meal, she felt the weight of many eyes following her. The older woman worked in silence for a time, then spoke softly. "You saved Dustfire," she said. "My son values that horse." "You did a dangerous thing, but a brave one." "It was instinct," Clara said. "I didn't think." "No," White Willow replied. "You felt. Sometimes that is stronger than thinking." She handed Clara a pot of stew. "Take this to my son. He has not eaten." Clara wanted to protest, to ask someone else to go. But White Willow's look ended any argument. She carried the pot to Niall, aware of the sudden quiet around them. "Your mother says you should eat," Clara said in Apache, surprised by the steadiness of her voice. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face, not at her presence but at her words. "Ah," he said softly. "Thank you." She turned to leave. His hand closed around her wrist, not hard, just enough to stop her. "Tonight," he said. "Dream. More lessons." It wasn't a question. Clara nodded, not trusting her voice, and gently pulled free. The heat of his touch followed her all the way back to her seat. The gathering slowly dissolved as people drifted away to repair storm damage. Clara helped where she could, keeping busy, avoiding her thoughts. But the sun sank lower, and eventually there was no more work left to delay her. She found Nail at their usual place by the stream. Tonight he had built a small fire. The flames danced between them as she sat, a barrier that felt both protective and frustrating. "You were angry earlier," she said after a long silence. "Yes." He stirred the fire with a stick, sparks spiraling into the dark. "You risked yourself for a horse," he said. "Why?" "I told you, instinct." "No." He looked at her then, firelight carving his features. "You choose to help. Always you choose. With healing, with children. Today with horse. Why?" Clara thought carefully before answering. "Because it's right," she said. "Because helping is what makes us human, even helping those who took you from your people." The words hung between them, sharp as a blade. Clara met his gaze without flinching. "You're human too. Your mother. The children here. They're human. I can hate what happened and still see that." He was silent for a long time. Then he spoke, quietly. "You are not like other white women we have taken." "How many?" Clara Reed caught herself and stopped. She wasn't sure she truly wanted the answer. "Some," Niall said. "Over years. They fight or they break. Become Red Mesa people, or die inside." He studied the fire, then her. "You do neither. You stay yourself, but you learn. You adapt, like water. It finds a new path, but it is still water." The quiet poetry of his words startled her. She was beginning to understand that there was far more depth to him than she had ever imagined. "Maybe I'm just practical," Clara said softly. "My mother always said I was too practical for my own good." "Your mother?" he repeated, his voice gentler now. "You miss her?" It wasn't a question, but Clara nodded anyway. Tears pressed close. "Every day. I dream sometimes. I wake thinking I'll see my father reading his Bible, hear my mother humming while she cooks." Her voice wavered. "Then I remember." "The pain grows smaller," Nail said quietly. "Never gone. But smaller, like a scar instead of an open wound." He stared into the fire. "My father. 2 winters ago. Iron Valley troops came when they thought us weak. He died protecting the village." His jaw tightened. "I became chief too young. Still learning." Clara wanted to reach across the fire, to offer comfort, but she didn't dare. Instead, she said, "You're a good chief. Your people respect you." "Respect born from fear is weak," he replied. "I want respect from—" He paused, searching. "Understanding." "Trust," Clara said. "Yes." His gaze lifted to her. "And yours." The words settled heavily between them. Clara felt warmth rush to her face and looked away. "You have it," she said. "My respect. Do I?" He rose suddenly and moved around the fire, crouching beside her. "Close. Far too close. Even though I led the raid that killed your family, even though I keep you here." Her breath caught. From this distance she could see flecks of gold in his dark eyes, smell sage and smoke on his skin. "You could have killed us all," she said. "You didn't. You could treat us as slaves. You don't. I don't understand all your reasons, but I respect the man I'm coming to know." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers brushed a loose strand of her hair. "Your hair holds firelight," he said, "like sunset on wheat fields." The unexpected tenderness unraveled something inside her. Without thinking, she leaned into his hand as it slid to cup her cheek. "This is dangerous," she whispered. "Yes," he said, and still did not move away. They remained frozen for several heartbeats. balanced on the edge of something that could not be undone. A branch snapped in the darkness. They sprang apart as Ayanna emerged from the shadows, her face twisted with fury. She hurled words at Niall in rapid Apache, too fast for Clara to follow, but the meaning was unmistakable. Then Ayanna turned on Clara, switching to English. "You think you win something? You are nothing but a white witch casting spells. He will wake, see truth. Then you will learn what happens to women who reach too high." She stalked away before either could respond. Niall's face closed, the familiar mask settling back into place. "Go back," he said quietly. "The storm brought more than rain. It brought change. I need time." Clara stood on unsteady legs, her cheek still burning where his hand had been. "I still have your eagle feather," she blurted. "I took it that day with the mountain lion. I'm sorry." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise flickered across Niall's face. Perhaps even something warmer. "Keep it," he said, "until I ask for it back." That was all. Clara Reed fled then, back to her shelter where Lena Stone and Rose Stone slept, unaware that the ground beneath her world had shifted. Clara lay awake long after the camp fell quiet, fingers pressed to the place on her cheek where he had touched her, the eagle feather heavy against her heart. The storm had brought change. Like the lightning that split the sky, there would be no returning to what had been before. 3 days passed without their evening lessons. Niall kept his distance, though Clara felt his gaze on her as she moved through her daily tasks. The camp hummed with tension, whispers trailing her steps. Even White Willow seemed guarded now, watching her son with troubled eyes. On the 4th night, Clara could bear it no longer. After the evening meal, when the camp settled into its familiar nighttime rhythm, she went to the stream. Their usual place was empty, the ashes of their last fire cold and scattered. She sat anyway, knees drawn to her chest, staring at the water shining silver beneath the rising moon. Maybe this was for the best. What future could exist between a Red Mesa chief and a captive white woman? What had happened by the fire had been madness. Nothing more. "You should not be here alone," Clara startled, her hand flying to her chest. Niall stood at the edge of the clearing, half wrapped in shadow. He looked tired, older than he had 4 days ago. "Neither should you," she said softly. He moved closer but did not sit, stopping with his back against a cottonwood. "The people talk," he said. "They say I forget who I am, who you are." "And have you?" "No." The word came out sharp. "I forget nothing. Not the raid, not your father falling, not your mother's blood on the ground. I remember all." The blunt truth made Clara flinch. "Then why?" "Because remembering is not the same as understanding." He pushed away from the tree, pacing like a caged mountain cat. "The first time I saw you across the battle, you did not scream, you did not run. You stood like stone. You looked at me as if you could see past skin to spirit. No fear." "There was fear," Clara said quietly. "But there was something else too. Recognition, like I had been waiting my whole life to see you. And there you were, at the worst possible moment." He stopped pacing, moonlight catching in his eyes. "Yes, that is what I felt. What I still feel. It makes no sense." "No," Clara agreed. "It doesn't." They stood there with the stream murmuring between them, the weight of impossibility pressing down like something solid. Then Niall crossed the space in 3 quick strides and dropped to his knees before her, close enough that she could see the pulse beating in his throat. "I have tried to stay away," he said, "tried to remember you are my enemy. But you are in my thoughts like an arrow I cannot pull free." His hands clenched at his sides. "Tell me to leave. Say you hate me for what I did. Make this easier." Clara's throat tightened. She could do it. She could speak the words that would send him away. It would be simpler. Safer. Instead, she reached out and laid her hand over his clenched fist. "I can't," she whispered. "God help me, I can't." His hand turned beneath hers, their fingers threading together. For a long moment they stayed like that, bound by a single point of contact. Then he pulled back and rose in one fluid motion. "Tomorrow night," Nael said, his voice rough. The people gathered for the ceremony, the full moon rite. "You will come," Nael said, "as a captive, as my guest." He hesitated, as if weighing a decision already made. "Wear the eagle feather." Before Clara Reed could answer, he was gone, dissolving back into the dark. She remained by the stream until her legs went numb, trying to understand what he had said. "As my guest." The words carried a gravity she could feel, even if she did not yet grasp its shape. The next day dragged. White Willow spoke little as Clara helped prepare the ceremonial food, but her looks said enough. Even the other captives sensed the shift. "What's happening tonight?" Agnes Ford asked as they ground corn. "The whole camp's buzzing." "Full moon ceremony," Clara replied carefully. "Nael asked me to attend." Agnes's hands stilled. "Be careful, Clara. These people, their ways aren't ours." "I know," Clara said. Yet even as she spoke, she wondered when that had stopped feeling entirely true. When their customs had begun to feel less foreign. When thoughts of escape had quietly given way to thoughts of belonging. As sunset neared, Ayanna appeared at their shelter. Clara braced herself for hostility, but the Apache woman's face was carefully blank. "He sends this," Ayanna said, holding out a bundle. "Says you know what to do." Inside was a dress unlike anything Clara had seen in the camp. Soft doeskin bleached pale as cream, adorned with intricate beadwork in blue and silver, like moonlight on water. "It's beautiful," Lena Stone whispered. "This was his mother's." Clara's hands trembled as she changed. The dress fit as if it had been made for her, the leather moving like a second skin. She braided her hair the way White Willow had taught her, and carefully wove the eagle feather into the plait. When she stepped outside, conversation died. Even Ayanna stared, shock flashing across her face, before fury reclaimed it. Clara walked through the camp with her chin lifted, her heart racing. The ceremonial ground lay beyond the main dwellings, a flat clearing where a great fire already burned. People sat in wide circles, men in the inner ring, women behind them, children scattered throughout. Drums beat a rhythm that matched the pounding of her pulse. Nael stood near the fire. When he saw her, something ignited in his eyes. He wore ceremonial dress, painted leather, feathers, copper bands catching the firelight. He looked magnificent, dangerous, utterly other, and yet the way he watched her was painfully familiar. He gestured to a place beside him, close to the fire, not with the women, beside where he would sit. The message was unmistakable. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through leaves as Clara sat, acutely aware of every gaze. Nael remained standing, speaking to his people in Apache. Clara caught fragments, change, crossing paths, spirits offering unexpected gifts. Then he looked directly at her and switched to English, his voice carrying clearly through the night. "The white woman saved Dustfire in the storm. She heals with my mother. She learns our words, our ways." He paused, never breaking her gaze. "The spirits mark her as different. I claim her as mine. Let any who object speak now." Clara's breath caught. The words rang with ceremony, with finality. Around the fire the people stirred. Several warriors looked uneasy, Ayanna seemed ready to erupt, but no one challenged their chief. Nail sat beside Clara, close enough that she felt the heat of him. The drums resumed, and the ceremony moved on, the night forever altered. Dancing. Singing. Rites Clara Reed did not fully understand. Yet she felt their weight. The firelight, the pounding drums, the voices rising and falling together, braiding the night into something old and powerful. At some point, Nail's hand found hers in the shifting shadows. His thumb traced slow circles in her palm, a hidden touch meant only for them. Heat flared along her skin, and her world narrowed to that single point of contact. The moon climbed high and full, washing the valley in silver. The dancing grew fierce, the drums faster, then, little by little, the ceremony eased. Families drifted away first, children drowsy in their arms. Others followed, until only a few remained near the dying fire. Niall rose and drew Clara to her feet. He led her beyond the edge of the camp, up a low rise overlooking the valley. Moonlight revealed every line of the land. The red rocks turned pale as bone, the stream a ribbon of light. "Do you understand what happened tonight?" he asked quietly. "You claimed me," Clara said, "in front of everyone, but I don't know what that truly means." He turned to her, lifting his hands to frame her face. "It means you are under my protection. No one may harm you. No one may take you." He paused, searching for words. "It means I choose you, Clara Reed. Despite all that stands between us, despite how impossible this is, I choose you." Tears filled her eyes. "I don't understand why." "Because you see me," he said. "Not a chief, not an enemy. You see the boy who was once called Hoshke, the angry child. You see the man who mourns his father, who fears he may lead poorly, who watches you and forgets to breathe." His thumbs brushed away her tears. "Be my woman. Not only tonight, all nights." The words hung between them, heavy with promise and danger. Clara thought of Jonah Reed and Martha Reed, of the life she had lost, of Noah Reed and the brothers she might never see again. She thought of blood spilled, of languages and customs dividing them. And she thought of his patience, of White Willow's kindness, of the way he had held her in the storm. "I don't know how," she whispered. "Neither do I," he admitted. "But we learn, like words, like healing. One day, then the next." Instead of answering, Clara reached up and drew the eagle feather from her braid, offering it to him. "This belongs to you." He took it, then gently wove it back into her hair. "No, it is yours. I gave it when I spoke by the fire. You are my woman. This tells all who see." She tried to speak, but he silenced her with a finger to her lips. "The sky sees, the moon sees, the spirits see. Clara is Nail's woman. Nail is Clara's man. Simple truth. Beneath the vast western sky, with the moon as witness and the valley spread below them, it did feel simple. Tomorrow would bring suspicion, conflict, and questions without easy answers. But tonight there was only truth. "Yes," Clara said, the word carried away on the night wind. "I will be your woman. Tonight. And all nights, despite everything. Because of everything." He kissed her beneath the watchful moon, and something inside Clara Reed split and reshaped itself, like a bone that heals stronger after it breaks. She was no longer the minister's daughter from Missouri. She had become someone new, forged by loss and remade in the least likely place. When they returned to camp, walking hand in hand, the central fire had burned down to glowing embers. Yet Clara felt fire living inside her now, a steady flame that refused to die. She was Nail's woman, The sheer impossibility of it stole her breath. But the ordinary world had ended for her on a dusty trail with her parents. What remained was the impossible, and the man beside her made it feel like fate. The reckoning came 3 days later, just as morning light painted the valley walls red. Clara was helping White Willow prepare medicines when the camp erupted. Angry voices cutting through the usual rhythms, tension crackling in the air. "Stay here," White Willow ordered. Clara was already moving toward the noise, dread pooling in her stomach. At the center of camp, 2 men faced each other. Nail stood still and composed, though Clara saw the tightness in his shoulders. Opposite him was Iron Fox, one of the strongest warriors, and Ayanna's cousin, gesturing sharply as he spoke. "He challenges Nael's leadership," someone murmured beside her. Clara turned to see the young warrior whose leg she had helped save, his eyes dark with worry. "He says Nael grows weak, says he thinks more of the white woman than his people." Her heart clenched. This was because of her. Her presence had torn open a fault line. Nael answered calmly, his voice steady and commanding. Iron Fox spat on the ground, a clear insult, and spoke again, words that made the crowd inhale as one. "What did he say?" Clara demanded. The young warrior hesitated. "He says Nael shames his father's memory, says a true chief would not take an enemy to his bed." He swallowed. "He says you are a witch who has clouded Nael's mind, says when he is chief, you will burn for your magic." Cold flooded Clara's veins. She knew what followed. Iron Fox was calling for combat. Nael's response was immediate. He pulled off his shirt, revealing scars earned across years of war, and spoke a single word that needed no translation. "Yes." The camp burst into motion. A wide circle was cleared. Weapons were chosen. Knives, not guns. This would be close, intimate. Clara was pushed back with the women, White Willow's hand clamping around her arm. "You must not interfere," the older woman said sharply. "Whatever happens, you stay back. Enter the circle and you die." "This is my fault," Clara whispered. "I should—" "Should what?" White Willow snapped. "Leave! Run! You think that stops this?" Her gaze was fierce. "Iron Fox wants power. You are the excuse, not the reason." The truth of it landed hard. The 2 men stepped into the circle, and silence fell. Iron Fox was younger, perhaps stronger, but Nael moved with the fluid certainty of experience. His knife rested easily in his hand. They circled, measuring, feinting. Then Iron Fox lunged, his blade slicing air where Nael had stood a heartbeat before. The fight exploded into motion, a deadly dance of strike and counterstrike, dodge and parry. Clara watched with her heart lodged in her throat. She had seen violence before. This was different. This was ceremonial, deliberate, bound by law, older than memory. Every movement carried purpose, each step shaped by generations where disputes were settled, blade to blade. Iron Fox struck first. His knife kissed Nael's shoulder, opening skin. A murmur rippled through the circle, and Ayanna's mouth curved in brief triumph. Nael did not falter. He used Iron Fox's moment of pride to hook his legs, sweeping him hard into the dust. They collided, bodies locking, knives flashing under the rising sun. Clara could scarcely draw breath, her nails biting into her palms. She saw Iron Fox's blade slip past Nael's guard and bite into his side, saw red bloom against brown skin, and she swallowed a scream. Nael twisted with the strike, turning force into leverage. In a breath, Iron Fox lay pinned, Nael's knife pressed cold at his throat. The camp went silent. "Yield," Nael ordered, blood streaking down his ribs. Iron Fox's eyes burned, but the law left him no escape. "I yield," he spat. Nael rose slowly, favoring his wounded side. You challenged. You lost. By our law, you leave or you accept my leadership. Choose. For a heartbeat, Clara thought Iron Fox would attack again. Then he surged to his feet and stalked away without a word. Ayanna followed, pausing only long enough to cast Clara a look filled with poison. Niall turned to speak to the people, and his knees gave out. Clara tore free of White Willow's grasp and ran, catching him before he fell. "Stubborn man," she muttered in Apache, pressing her hand to the wound at his side. "Too proud to show pain." He managed a thin smile. "Must show strength for the people." "The people can wait. You're bleeding." White Willow was already there, sharp and focused. "Bring him to my dwelling, now." Together they carried Nail to his mother's healing place. Clara helped strip away his blood-soaked clothing, forcing her hands to stay steady despite the terror in her chest. The cut at his side was deep but clean, the shoulder wound shallow. Both could heal, if sickness stayed away. "Hold him," White Willow commanded. Clara cradled Nail's head in her lap as the medicines burned and bit. He hissed through clenched teeth and crushed her fingers in his grip. "Talk," he ground out. "Distract." So she spoke, about the herbs she was learning, about Dustfire growing spoiled from too many treats, about anything but the fear that had nearly broken her as she watched him fight. He anchored himself to her voice, to her face above him, riding the pain by holding on to her. When White Willow finished stitching and binding, Niall lay pale but awake. She straightened, wiping her hands. He will live. More scars for his collection, but he will live. Her gaze fixed on Clara. "You stay. He heals better with a reason to heal." After she left, Clara brushed Nail's hair back from his brow. "That was foolish," she whispered. "Fighting over me." "Not over you," he corrected softly. "Over fear, over change. Iron Fox sees only the past. I must see the future, or my people die." He caught her hand and pressed it to his chest, where his heart beat strong and sure. "You are part of that future. Your people may never accept me. Some will, others won't. That is the way of change." He drew her down until their foreheads touched. "I almost lost you once to violence. Today, you almost lost me. It makes the truth clear." She closed her eyes, breathing him in. Life is too short for fear. Sweat and blood, crushed herbs, and the familiar scent of him filled the small space. When I saw that blade sink in, I thought, "I can't lose you too. I can't." "You won't," he murmured. "Too stubborn to die?" A shadow of his usual smile touched his mouth. "Besides, I still have to teach you the rest of the language. Your pronunciation is terrible." She laughed despite herself, the sound thin and wet. "Careful, or I'll let Ayanna nurse you instead." "Cruel woman." His hand rose to her cheek. "My woman." They stayed that way as the sun climbed, Clara keeping watch while Nail drifted in and out of sleep. People came and went, warriors reporting that Iron Fox had left the valley, taking Ayanna and a handful of followers with him. Most remained, their loyalty settled by the outcome of the fight. Agnes Ford arrived later with Lena Stone and Rose Stone. "We were worried," she said softly, taking in the sight, Clara in a patchy dress, Nail's blood on her hands, the closeness between them. "I'm all right," Clara said. "We're all right." Agnes studied her a long moment. "You've chosen, haven't you? This life, him." "Yes." The word came steady, certain. "I have." "Then God help you both," Agnes said, not unkindly. "The world isn't ready for what you're trying to build." After they left, Nail stirred. "She is right. The world is not ready." Then we make it ready, Clara said fiercely. One day at a time, one person at a time, starting here. With our people, he corrected gently. You are one of us now. My mother will teach you the ceremony. Make it formal. Her throat tightened. You mean marriage, Apache way first. Then, when we can, your way too. Make both spirits content. He winced as he shifted. If you say yes. I already said yes, she whispered. Under the moon, remember? Say again, he asked. I want to hear. She leaned down, kissed him softly, careful of his wounds. Yes, Niall, Hoshka, yes to all of it. The challenges, the differences, the impossibilities. Yes. His smile this time was full and real. Then I will fight 100 iron foxes for you. No more fighting, Clara said firmly. You've shed enough blood for one lifetime. Even as she spoke, she knew it wasn't true. There would be more trials, from his people, from hers, from a world that wouldn't understand what they were building. But looking at him, wounded for defending their bond, she felt something fierce and protective rise in her chest. They would face whatever came. Together. The minister's daughter and the Apache chief, laying a bridge between worlds, one careful stone at a time. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth having ever was. Niall's recovery took 7 days. 7 days Clara barely left his side. 7 days. White Willow taught her deeper healing arts. 7 days the camp slowly accepted this new reality. The other captive women watched with awe and worry. The Red Mesa people reassessed old judgments. On the 8th morning, Clara woke at Niall's pallet to find it empty. Panic flared, until she heard his voice outside, strong and clear, addressing the warriors. She stepped out to see him standing tall, despite healing wounds, issuing orders for a hunting party. You should be resting, she scolded in Apache, earning hidden smiles from nearby men. A chief cannot rest, he said, calm and sure, when his people need food. He answered, but his gaze softened the moment it found hers. Tonight, my dwelling, come when the moon rises. The day passed with Clara wound tight as a drawn wire. She dropped tools, forgot simple steps. White Willow watched her struggle with quiet amusement. You think too much, the older woman said at last. The heart already knows. The mind makes knots. It all happened so fast, Clara murmured. The raid was only 2 months ago. How can a life turn upside down in that short a time? The world doesn't change, White Willow replied, setting aside her stone. You change. You begin to see. She studied Clara a moment longer. When Niall was born, Swift River spoke of a vision. He said the child would stand between 2 worlds. I believed it meant war, strength, enemies defeated. Her mouth curved slightly. Now I hear another meaning. That evening, Clara bathed in the stream, the cool water steadying her nerves. She braided her hair with care and slipped into the ceremonial dress from the moon ceremony. The eagle feather went in last. Her hands shook as she fixed it in place. Niall's dwelling stood a little apart, fitting for a chief. She hesitated at the entrance, heart pounding. Come, his voice called softly. Inside, the space felt different. Furs layered across the ground, oil lamps casting a warm glow against the hide walls. Niall sat near a small fire, wearing simple leather trousers and a soft shirt that wouldn't chafe his healing wounds. His hair fell loose over his shoulders, making him seem younger, almost unguarded. Sit, he said, indicating the furs beside him. They were quiet for a moment, fire snapping between them. I have something for you, he said, drawing out a small leather pouch. Inside lay a necklace, silver and turquoise beads, white shells threaded between them. My grandmother's, he said. My mother kept it for the woman I would choose. Clara's throat tightened as he moved behind her to fasten it. His fingers brushed the back of her neck, sending a shiver through her. It's beautiful, she whispered. You make it so. He stepped back, his face solemn. Clara, I must ask plainly. At the moon ceremony you said yes, that was fire and feeling. Now I ask again, with clear eyes. Will you be my wife, knowing what it means? Tell me, she said steadily. Tell me without softness. It means you become Apache in all but blood, he said. You learn our ways fully. You bear children who belong to two worlds and fully to neither. It means when the Iron Valley troops come, and they will, you stand with us. It means you may never return to your people. My people are gone, Clara said quietly. All but Noah. I pray he's alive somewhere, building a life. I can't live facing backward. She met his gaze. I tried hating you, hating your people. Hate is too heavy. It crushes everything. And love? He asked. She didn't look away. Love is unexpected, terrifying. But it doesn't weigh me down. It lifts me when grief should drown me. When you teach me your words, when you look at me and don't see an enemy, only an equal, I forget to mourn. Is that wrong? No, he said softly. It is a gift. Your parents would not want you bound to sorrow. He took her hands. I speak truth now. When I led the raid, I was full of anger. Soldiers had burned our winter camp, killed many. I wanted vengeance. His voice dropped. Then I saw you, standing still, unbroken. She studied him, voice steady but full. You looked at me without fear, and something in you answered something in me, like two broken stones that fit. That is why I spared you, Nail said. My warriors thought me weak. I knew better. You were meant to live, meant to come here, meant to change what comes next. His thumbs traced slow circles across her palms. I did not expect to love you. It arrived quietly, like snow, one flake then another, until the whole world is white. Tears filled Clara's eyes. I fought it, told myself it was gratitude, or loneliness, or something invented to survive. She swallowed. But when Iron Fox challenged you, when I thought I might lose you, I knew. Her breath shook. I love you, because of everything we are, because of everything that happened. He answered without hesitation. Never a captive. From the first moment you were more. And now, she said softly, I am yours, if you'll have me, knowing I'll stumble, say the wrong things, struggle with your ways, knowing some will never accept us, knowing the danger. He pulled her into his arms, careful of healing wounds. She folded against him, a sense of home settling where she hadn't known a home could be. His kiss found her, gentle, then deeper, until they parted, breathing the same air. You are sure? He asked, forehead to hers. Doubts about the future are many? About you? Clara met his eyes. None. I choose you, Nail. I choose this life. I choose learning and building what comes next. With you. His smile broke free and bright. Then we marry. Apache ceremony in 3 days, when the moon is dark. A beginning in darkness, like a seed in the ground. Yes, she said, the word as natural as breath. Yes to all of it. They spoke long into the night, shaping a future. He would teach her to ride the Apache way, to read land and sky. She would help him face the changing world. Letters, English, tools to survive what pressed closer every season. Their children would walk between worlds, carrying bridges where wounds once lay. It will not be easy, Nail said as the fire fell low. My people will test you. Yours, if we meet them, will call you traitor. Then we stand together, Clara replied. That is marriage, side by side. He kissed her again, soft and sure. "You are wise beyond your years, Clara Reed." She smiled. "Names matter less than truth." He walked her back to her shelter, propriety holding for 3 more nights. At the entrance, he caught her hand. "No regrets?" She thought of Jonah and Martha Reed, of the life lost on a dusty trail. Then of the life she was choosing, hard, dangerous, full of purpose and love she never imagined. "No regrets," she said. "Only gratitude, for you, for this chance, for a future I could not see before." He lifted her hand to his lips, both Apache and gentleman. 3 days. Inside the shelter, Lena Stone stirred. "Clara, are you really going to marry him?" "Yes, sweet girl, I am." "But he's human," Clara finished gently. "Different from us, yes, but human. And he loves me." Lena was quiet for a moment. Then she said softly, "I hope someone loves me like that someday. Like it doesn't matter where you come from, only where you're going." Clara smoothed the girl's hair. "That's exactly what love is. And yes, you'll find it too. Even in the darkest places, love finds a way to grow." As she settled to sleep, Clara touched the necklace at her throat and smiled. In 3 days, she would take the final step into her new life. No more standing between worlds, no more looking back. She would be Nail's wife, Apache in all but blood. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt only peace. This was her answer, the one she could never deny even if she tried. Love had found her in the most impossible place, with the most impossible man. And she would spend her life proving that impossible love could be the strongest kind of all, under the same wide sky. The wedding ceremony began at sunset, when the sky burned with color that mirrored the red rock walls of the valley. Clara stood inside White Willow's dwelling, hands trembling as the older woman applied the final touches of ceremonial paint to her face. White clay and red ochre, laid in patterns that marked her as a bride. "You are ready," White Willow said, stepping back. "Not only in appearance, in spirit." Clara wore a dress made by the women of the tribe. Each had contributed something: beads, stitching, careful hands. Even those who had once looked at her with open distrust. The leather was pale and soft, like Nail's grandmother's dress, but embroidered with Apache patterns and small blue flowers that echoed Clara's past. "The people accept you," White Willow said, reading her thoughts. "You did not try to become Apache. You remained yourself. That is why." Outside, Lena Stone and Rose Stone waited, having begged to witness the ceremony. Agnes Ford stood with them, her face lined with worry and reluctant understanding. She had chosen to remain with the Red Mesa people rather than risk the dangerous journey east, but Clara's choice still frightened her. "You look beautiful," Lena breathed, "like a princess from a story." "A story where the princess marries the dragon," Agnes said quietly, then sighed. "Forgive me, Clara. I see how he looks at you, how you look at him. I just worry." "I know," Clara said gently. "But this is my choice, my happiness." The drums began, deep, steady, calling the people together. Clara's heart matched their rhythm as White Willow led her toward the ceremonial ground. The entire tribe had assembled, forming a wide circle around the sacred fire. And there, waiting for her, stood Nail. He wore ceremonial white leather adorned with eagle feathers, his face painted with the markings of his role as chief. But it was his eyes that held her, warm, steady, filled with love as he watched her approach. The ceremony was unlike anything Clara had known in her Protestant upbringing, yet it felt no less sacred. They stood before the fire as Swift River, ancient and weathered, spoke in Apache. White Willow translated the words that mattered most. Two paths become one path. Two spirits were set on the same road. What had been shattered was made whole. What had once stood as enemy now stood as beloved. Niall took her hands, and Clara felt the faint tremor in his fingers. The great chief, who had faced blades and bullets without blinking, was nervous on his wedding day. It made her love him all the more. They spoke their vows in both tongues. Niall went first, his words carried in Apache and then in English. Clara Reed, you came to us through blood and grief. From grief came understanding. From understanding came love. I take you as my wife, to protect, to honor, to stand beside through every season. Your people become my people. Your God walks with our spirits. Together we are stronger than we ever were apart. Tears blurred her sight, but Clara's voice held steady. Niall, you spared my life when you had every reason not to. You showed me that beneath our differences, we are the same, people who love, who mourn, who hope. I take you as my husband, to support, to love, to build a bridge between worlds with. Your people become my people. Your spirits stand beside my God. Together, we choose a new story. Swift River bound their hands with a cord braided from sweetgrass and sage, his chant low and steady. Then came the tradition Clara had learned about, but only now fully understood. The sharing of corn pollen, the exchange of gifts between families. With no kin of her own present, White Willow stood in her place, receiving the offerings with quiet dignity. As the sun slipped behind the valley walls, the celebration took shape. Venison and corn cakes were passed, wild berries and pine nuts shared. The drums shifted into brighter rhythms, and the dancing began. Niall guided Clara through the steps she had practiced so carefully, his hands sure at her waist. No stepping on feet, she whispered, proud and breathless. You learn well, he replied, turning her smoothly. My wife learns well. The word sent a thrill through her. Wife. She was Niall's wife now, bound by the law and traditions of the Red Mesa people. Later, he had promised, they would honor her faith as well. But for now, this was enough. More than enough. As evening deepened, people came forward with gifts and blessings. Warriors who once watched her with suspicion now nodded in respect. Women who had kept their distance smiled and touched her hands. Even those who had once stood with Iron Fox seemed to accept what had been forged here. You did this, Niall said quietly during a pause in the dancing. Not the ceremony. You. We did this, Clara corrected. Together? Much later, when the moon rose high and the drums fell silent, Niall led her to their dwelling, their home. The space had changed again, adorned with flowers and healing herbs, new furs laid across the floor, wedding gifts stacked along the walls. Are you happy? He asked, a sudden flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. Clara answered by drawing him into a kiss, pouring every ounce of certainty she had into it. When they parted, both were breathless. I'm standing in an Apache dwelling, she said softly, smiling. Married to an Apache chief. Paint on my face, feathers in my hair. 2 months ago, I would have called this a nightmare. Now, she cupped his face gently, I can't imagine any other life. They spent the night discovering one another anew, learning that love could be fierce and gentle at once, patient, steady, alive. Outside, the camp settled into sleep. Inside their dwelling, Clara Reed and Niall shaped a world of their own, neither fully one nor the other, but something strong in between. When dawn arrived, washing the sky in pale pinks and quiet gold, Clara Reed woke in her husband's arms. The truth of it settled over her again. She was married. To Niall, the man who had once led the raid that ended her parents' lives. By all reason, the weight of that history should have crushed her. Instead, what she felt was a strange, steady sense of rightness. "No regrets?" Niall asked softly, reading her thoughts the way he so often did. "None," Clara answered without hesitation. "We can't undo what's behind us, but we can choose what comes next." In the days that followed, their new life took shape. Clara moved fully into Niall's dwelling, stepping into the role of a chief's wife. It was no simple transition. There were customs to master, quiet politics to navigate, doubts to face from those still watching her closely. She met each challenge head-on. Agnes Ford and the Stone Girls, Lena and Rose, were offered safe passage to the nearest fort. The girls chose to stay, having formed bonds with children of the Red Mesa people. Agnes hesitated, torn between fear and loyalty, but in the end she remained. "Where would I go?" she asked Clara one evening. "My husband is gone. I have nothing waiting back east. Here, I matter. You showed me that." Clara continued her healing work alongside White Willow, learning until others sought her out by name. She taught English to those who wanted it, believing that understanding the white man's tongue might one day save lives. Niall stood behind her, in all of it, proud of the respect his wife was earning. Yet neither of them believed this peace would last untouched. Beyond the valley, the world was shifting. Iron Valley troops would come. More frontier settlers would press deeper into Apache land. One evening, as they sat together watching the sun sink behind the red stone cliffs, Niall spoke the fear they both carried. "Hard days are coming. Our old way may not survive. The question is whether we fight until the end, or find another path." "What do you want?" Clara asked quietly. "I want my people to live," he said. "I want our children to have a future. If that means learning, adapting, changing, then maybe that's not surrender." He drew her closer. "You showed me that change doesn't always mean death. Sometimes it means new life." "Whatever comes," Clara said, resting her head against his shoulder. "We face it together." Niall nodded, gesturing toward the widening sky as the first stars appeared, all under the same sky. They sat in silence then, two people born to different worlds who had found home in each other. The future was uncertain, full of danger and difficult choices. But in that moment, they had love. And hope. Clara thought of Jonah and Martha Reed, wishing they could see her now, wishing they might understand. Their daughter had shaped something beautiful from grief. She touched the eagle feather woven into her hair, no longer a trophy or a token, but a sign of belonging. "I love you," she said in Apache, the words flowing easily now. "And I love you," Niall answered in careful English. "My wife, my heart, my bridge to tomorrow. Beneath the vast western sky, witness to so much blood and sorrow, Clara Reed and Niall held one another and dared to believe in a future where love might outlast hatred, where understanding could mend what violence had torn apart. Perhaps it was an impossible dream, but their love had once seemed impossible too. And yet there it was, steady, real, and alive, under the same ancient stars, blessing a chief and his unlikely bride as they stepped forward together, hand in hand, heart to heart. "Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for giving your time to this story. Some journeys shape us, and we hope this one left a mark on your heart. There are more paths ahead, more legends of love, hardship, and redemption beneath the western sky. Please subscribe, leave your thoughts, and travel with us once again. Thank you, and God bless." Aviso legal. Disclaimer. The stories presented here are creative expressions and may mix historical inspiration with dramatized scenes. AI tools contribute to some elements of voice, imagery, and structure, but every published story is refined by editors and creators to ensure authentic emotional impact. We honor YouTube's policies and do not generate deceptive likenesses or artificial depictions of real people. All audiovisual components are legally licensed. Any use, redistribution, or alteration of this content must be granted through written consent. Your presence here means a lot. Thank you for supporting artistic storytelling.